couple of weeks. We do want to chat a little bit more about GAA now, just to round the show off, but I just remind you that OTB AM is live this morning with thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. We did want to give a specific mention to Roscommon because of their performance at the weekend. You saw them in the flesh. You spoke a little bit about them already at the top of the show, and just looking at Kevin McStay after the game, he looked like a man who just come home from Vietnam or something. He was absolutely rattled. It was amazing. It just summed up what an amazing game it was.
Yeah, he's normally not a guy who's too stuck for words, but I heard an interview with him afterwards and he was just breathless.
Yeah.
But that was the sort of game that it was. I don't think they'll get the same level of openness against the other teams in the Super 8s. I mean, the first half against Armagh went man to man with one extra man at the back, and the amount of line breaks that came from their half back line and their midfield, where they just went past one man and suddenly they're soloing into 40 yards of space. This is the thing about the Super 8s. You look at it and you could make a case for any of them. You really could. And it's so hard to stick your neck out and say this team is going to be there, that team is going to be there. Maybe bar Dublin and Kerry, because I think everyone is in an agreement that they probably have looked the strongest of the bunch so far, even without Dublin setting the world alight. You just know there's something else in the tank there. But yeah, Roscommon, can they come down off the high of winning a game that was that frantic in that heat and it wasn't over until the 72nd minute when they got the second goal. That's their challenge this week.
Yeah, going to play Dublin in Croke Park as well, it just kind of looms large on the horizon, and obviously Tyrone as their neutral game isn't the easiest.
No, they've drawn a tough group. Tough group.
Yeah, and I'd worry about them, as Michael says, about they're a team that likes to play football. So when they come up against, the way Armagh had to set up at certain times, they're fine with that, because they're very good runners, but then they've excellent runners off the ball, and they're very good at when they come into contact to just stop and they try to slip a hand past the fellas coming off their shoulder. The worry is if they have to break down a very stubborn defence. I don't think that if they do that and then a team will counter attack them, I don't think their defence is what it is cracked up to be. I think their forward unit is a bit stronger. I would just worry about, it's kind of one of, well, if you score 12, we'll score 14 type thing. I think if it comes to, an arm wrestle, and they're having to rely on their defence, because a lot of the forwards as well they're forwards. They're not necessarily guys who are saying, no, actually I'm happy enough to drop back into a defensive line and stay down there. They like to be up forward. They like to be, on the ball, taking shots, having a go. So I would worry about them from that aspect.
I think, the form guide for them is the Connacht final at the moment, where Galway have in the same fashion that Tyrone have done, have refined their defensive structure, and Roscommon found it difficult in the second half, especially, to get into a position where their forwards can cause damage.
Yeah,
and the problem for them, as you're saying, is if they concede 117 or 118 against Tyrone, are they going to get more than that?
Yeah,
against a team that is really, they're so disciplined. They're just not giving you the space. It's like Armagh kept 5 forwards up. I looked at a couple of stages of the first half and they had 4 and 5 forwards in the opposition half, and as a forward down the far end, the amount more space you get in that situation is huge. And like, their forward play yesterday was superb. 3 wides, 222, and scores all over the field. Can they replicate that against a team that's condensed into 45 and breaking at pace? That's the question for them.
The other team we wanted to chat about, because I have got to mention this morning, is Monaghan. Like, the big question with them, there's been 2 big questions with them over the last couple of years, really, hasn't there? It's like, do they have any other scoring threat outside Conor McManus, and can they finally end their Croke Park duck? And they seem to have answered one of those questions. Like, Jack McCarran and Conor McCarthy have now allowed them to form an inside line, which is pretty lethal. Yeah,
but the thing about Monaghan is, and I know it's tough to say it, but they've come off the back of, in the qualifiers, have they had the same tests that the rest of the teams have had? Probably not. I mean, it was 4 points against Laois, but Graham Brodie pulled off 6 unbelievable saves. It could have been a hell of a lot more. Have they got the same test that Roscommon got, that Tyrone got against Meath, that those sort of teams. They've kind of fell into a Super 8s, and albeit they'll be happy enough, they haven't had to, you know, really go to the well yet. They've 3 weekends, and they seem like a team to me that's actually much better playing against teams who are considered better than them, where they can really rise up against it. And they'll be an interesting proponent. As we've said though, first weekend against Kildare, that is the pinnacle game for them. They have to win. Yeah. Same way Kildare do.
Let's see, who are you thinking of winning these games then? So it's Kerry against Galway, Kildare against Monaghan, Dublin against Donegal, and Tyrone against Roscommon. We can see that on screen. Anthony, who are you picking here?
Yeah, I mean, the Kerry-Galway game is going to be a fascinating game purely because we just haven't seen that much of either team. You know, again, it'll be, well, who's coming in with the better form. I tip my hat, obviously, to Kerry there. I think Kildare will beat Monaghan. I agree with Michael. I just don't think they've had any of the tests that some of the other has, and if Kildare have had. I think confidence-wise, Kildare will be much better. The Donegal-Dublin game, I think, is an absolutely... That is a really, really interesting game. Because, again, you know, everyone expects Dublin that they'll be able to go up the gears. But Donegal have massively impressed me. You know, they've massively impressed me. Okay, a couple of injuries will hamper them. Obviously, McBrearty's one is a massive loss, considering how, you know, the way he was going. He was in his pomp. He was just playing absolutely brilliant, and he was a great foil. And Murphy and himself were working really, really well. But this is. That is one that I think could cause Dublin real problems. I think Donegal will have the gander up about, you know, the whole thing of not being able to play at home. They'll have a bit of a cause. You know, it's just going to be, I think that's going to be an absolutely brilliant game. And I think it's going to potentially set a marker down that other teams, even if Donegal lose, that they may follow. Because I think Donegal have changed this. I think Donegal have changed their way of playing, specifically coming in to play Dublin in Croke Park. That ability to kick the ball, to have massive pace coming from their back line. And with the McHughes, and I tell you, Dublin will always remember Donegal of the last number of years, because if ever there was a team who have the ability to turn them over, Donegal have it.
You're picking Dublin.
Yeah. Just.
I think Donegal's game and what they've developed this year under Colin Bonner, who's done Declan Bonner, who's done a fantastic job, is who has gone the tightest with Dublin in the last 2 or 3 years is Mayo, and it was huge physicality and being able to play man on man and have a go, have a proper go at them. Because as we've seen in the last 2 or 3 years as well, if you sit off and give them the ball, they'll hurt you. They just have too much threats. You have to be able to go neck and neck with them. You have to be able to hit 118, 119 against them, and that's what Donegal have been building towards. Can they find the scores that McBrearty was giving them earlier in the championship? And it's a wicked shame that he's not going to be playing in the Super 8s, because he's arguably been the standout footballer of the whole championship so far. And we wish him well. Obviously, it's a tough ask to come back from a cruciate, especially. And this time of the year is tough. You've built yourself up. You get to the summer. You rarely see that sort of injury in the summer. It's normally something that you might see during the league, or maybe in pre-season training when your body isn't as conditioned, and it's a big disappointment. I do take your point. I think if someone wants to take Dublin out this year, they have to be able to go neck and neck with them. Kerry have been building towards it. They've been trying out 2 or 3 different things in Munster that they try to squeeze against Clare's kickouts, that I'm sure they're trying to go after Cluxton in that regard. They did a similar thing a couple of years ago in the semi-final and got, about 2-4 off it. But the fresher provincial teams have a huge advantage when it'll get to week 3.
Yeah, big time.
And if it's coming down the line, then they would be hoping that their legs will carry them through, I would say.
So final one then, Roscommon against Tyrone.
I think Tyrone will just squeeze the life out of that game, and they'll win it in a very, very tight affair.
Tyrone. So you're going Tyrone, Dublin, Kildare, Kerry. Any disagreements there, Michael?
I think the only one that would be different to that, I think Galway. I think Galway could. I think that's going to be the tightest game of the weekend. Last year they went to Croke Park and they had no belief, I don't think, that they could go and beat Kerry in a quarter final, and I think the difference that they've shown since that game to this game, they're like a completely different team, and the way they play will really put Kerry to the test. They probably won't be able to get the ball as quickly into their inside forward line, who can do huge damage, and that's the game I'm looking forward to the most. I mean, you're looking at 4 games there that are probably evens, 11-10, all of them.
Yeah.
Maybe the Tyrone one, you might get a bit longer odds on Roscommon perhaps, but there's going to be nothing in any of them. That's the only one that I could see maybe a small bit tighter than the rest, but I'd probably agree with the four predictions.
Yeah, I'd slightly disagree, because I thought Galway would be a bit more impressive, and I think Walsh has decided that he's got over games. You know, like, I mean, it's fine and well having his setup and having his strategy for the Connacht, but I think he's got over games in that they've contained, and then they've kind of broken, and they've upped the gears at certain times. You can't do that against Kerry. You know, they're going to have to score, and they're going to have to score big, because Kerry will score, and you know, it's the space afforded, you know, on the field will suit Kerry. So when you bring that game plan into Croke Park, that's a whole different kettle of fish then, you know. And my only worry is they've always lacked a bit of belief about beating Kerry. You know, they've always struggled against Kerry.
I think they went to Tralee during the league and really squeezed Kerry. Yeah. The problem is we just don't know how good Kerry are at the moment. Yeah. And that's why these games are going to be just so good to watch, because you're finally going to get to a stage of knowing where a team is at. You're not going to end the championship and go, do you know what, they could have beaten someone else who was in the other side. You're going to either do your business or you're not. Yeah, it's going to be fantastic stuff. Just a final word before we wrap up this morning. Donncha O'Connor's announced his retirement from Cork football. It's obviously another departure from that 2010 team. A fantastic servant, probably because of the toughness of the Munster Championship from a Cork perspective, always struggling to get past Kerry, and then subsequently the knock-on effect of that in the All-Ireland stages. Could you say that he was an underrated talent? Definitely. I mean, as an inside forward, he went about his business without too much fanfare. You turn around, you think you're keeping him quiet, and suddenly is 3 points on the board. Yeah. He was remarkably accurate from the right-hand corner for a right-legged kicker. I could never get over it that, regardless of the angle on that side, he was always getting that point across his body, which is really tough, a really tough kick. And he was one of the main reasons that they won the All-Ireland in 2010. He's been a great servant to Cork. He's 37 years of age. He's been, even since, like, he was in his 30s or coming to his late 20s when they won that, and has continued, obviously been involved when they brought through a lot of young fellas in the last couple of years, and it would have been easy for him to step away, and I think he'll be sorely missed there. They need to get him involved really, and in the backroom team of some setup in Cork. Yeah, he's great. I've marked him a few times. Excellent, as Michael said, but actually a very tough individual too. You know, he didn't shirk anything, and he was a good talker on the field. He was a very good organizer, and he was a talisman for them. He was a bit of a spiritual leader there for a number of years, but again, without a lot of fanfare. You know, fellas would be kind of like, you'd nearly kind of forget about him, you know, if you were just thinking of as a fan. But I'd say on the Cork team sheet, he was one of the first men down for many a year. You know, he was an excellent player, and I think probably it's a good thing and it's a bad thing that at 37 he was still there. But look, I mean, it's personally it was a great thing for himself, but from a Cork perspective, that they kind of nearly had to go to him even when anything was going wrong. He was nearly the first fella they, you know, between himself and Kerrigan, he was nearly the two fellas that they pulled off the bench. You know, like, I mean, but listen, that's a whole different conversation about Cork and Cork football and where it's going. But no, best of luck to him, and you know, he's had a super career. Absolutely, ditto to that, and we will get more into the Cork story, I dare say, over the next couple of weeks and months. Michael, thank you very much for coming in this morning. Good to have your company in studio. Anthony, as always, thanks a million for popping in. More on all of the weekend's action coming up this evening on Off the Ball, on the radio and on all the digital platforms from 7 o'clock. Gerald will be back in the hot seat tomorrow morning from 7:45 with his stories from the Vendée region and everything else besides from the Tour de France. We'll chat to you